Kenosha continues its riots throughout the street, and Madison joins in the fun. Plus, we will take some time and look through what was going on with the RNC last night, and not a whole lot else because it's already a pretty full show. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning and welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. I know that some of you saw the videos that I put out last night without any sound, or yesterday afternoon without any sound. And part of that came from the fact that I tried to do a stream from my truck on Bluetooth. And on Streamlabs, when you disconnect from Bluetooth, it puts it into a state of automatic mute, and I didn't see that right away. So I walked around the whole day for Kenosha without any sound coming in onto my stream, and I do apologize for that, but you guys all saw the images and everything else from that as well. That was pretty intense to come from a place where I used to live and a place where I used to call home. And I mean, this was right near where I used to live. I actually got to my old apartment and I parked in front of it, and I thought that I was getting hoaxed by the news because I didn't see anything. I saw no damage whatsoever. Then I got to the other side of the train tracks and it was just boom. Right there, like that. I couldn't believe some of the carnage that I saw. And I mean, you saw the car lot. That was the one that took me, Ruther High School. One of the big historic buildings that we saw while we were walking around there, with all the windows boarded up on the front. None of the churches were hit, which was astounding, and I was commenting on that as well, even though my stream was muted. There was a miraculous church that was right behind the car lot that didn't get touched. A little bit of smoke damage, but not one lick of flame, because some good Samaritan was walking by and used the rain in the rain barrels to try and block off the flames from getting there. It was an intense day. It was a great thing to watch. I was very happy that I took the time and went down and had a look at that, but it brought a tear to my eye to see what was going on. And then I watched the press conference, which you guys wouldn't have been able to hear much more of that anyway, any more than what I was showing on the video, because, I mean, while we were sitting here watching this, nobody in the crowd in the press conference, not the mayor and not any of the Black Lives Matter activists that were there, knew how to use the bullhorn. None of them knew how to use the bullhorn, and yet they were still sitting there trying to scream into the bullhorn at each other so everybody else could hear. So, yeah, even if I had the sound on, you wouldn't have been able to hear it any better than I would have been able to hear that, unfortunately. And then at the very end, I thought I was about to get tear gassed, because after they pulled the mayor in and the protesters ripped the door off the safety building, 8 riot gear clad police officers came out in the end, and then something moved very, very quickly and people started to scatter. And yes, that was the point where I thought that I was about to feel tear gas for the first time. I've been tased, never tear gassed. So I'm glad I got to share that with you, at least in images without sound. I just had a lot of commentary about playing Frogger going across the street for the most part. But yeah, I mean, it was bad. And we're going to talk a bit about that here after the stocks here. But before we get started, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We've got my show and all of my streams. We've got Stephen Ignoramus. We've got the Generational Gap. We also carry the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the Freckles and Brit Show, and the Already Conservative. So come on over there and pick us up, check us out, pick up some of our swag, and help us support great creators. All right. Let's move on into stocks here so we can go back and talk about what happened yesterday in Kenosha, what happened last night, and what is going to continue to happen. So first, looking at the Dow Jones, looking at the graph here, looks like we had a fairly upwards day. We ended out at 28,308, where we were in the 27 range yesterday, so it was a decent day. The futures jumped back up and then dropped back down and went back up again, so it was a fairly decent day in the market here. We're edging right back up to where we were back in February, but don't forget the fact that inflation had a little bit to do with that as well. So there are a couple things going on with that, and we'll see what IBD has to say about it. So, from Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones futures jump on U.S.-China news. Best Buy tumbles 5% on earnings, from Scott Latonin. Dow Jones futures jumped more than 175 points on U.S.-China trade news early Tuesday, while S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ 100 futures also rose after Monday's coronavirus news-driven stock market rally. Dow Jones stock, Apple, and Tesla set more record highs, while Alibaba stock and Amazon.com staged new breakouts. Meanwhile, Three new Dow Jones Industrial Average stocks were announced. The tech-heavy Nasdaq climbed 0.6% to hit another all-time high. The S&P 500 rallied 1%, hitting a record high, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average outperformed with a 1.35% gain, or 378 points. Stock market leaders Apple and Tesla hit more than record highs on Monday. Top stocks near buy zones include Alibaba, Amazon, Domino's Pizza, Adobe, Amazon, and Domino are all on IBD leaderboard stocks. Among companies reporting earnings, Palo Alto Networks reported earnings late Monday. Shares fell more than 3% in extended trade. Best Buy reported strong Q2 results early Tuesday, but said that Q3 sales likely won't continue at the current level of about 20% growth. Best Buy shares fell more than 5% in pre-market trade. Well, nobody wants to go spend money at Best Buy. You go to Best Buy when you want to buy it right away. But everybody else offers the same shit that Best Buy offers online for cheaper. So yeah, I can't imagine why they fell 5%. We got some trade news here. Early Tuesday, the Dow futures were up 0.7% versus fair value, while the S&P 500 futures rose 0.5%. Nasdaq 100 futures were flat versus fair value. Remember, overnight action in Dow Jones futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Late Monday, top U.S. and Chinese officials agreed to continue forward with Phase 1 trade deal. Their phone call included Ambassador Lighthizer, and Secretary Mnuchin, along with China's Vice Premier Liu Hu. According to the U.S. Trade Representative's Office, both sides see progress and are committed to taking the steps necessary to ensure the success of the agreement. The statement also said the parties also discussed the significant increases in purchases of U.S. products by China, as well as future actions needed to implement the agreement. So we're going to get a trade deal going on here. I don't know what this is going to do to the American worker or job protectionism or keeping any jobs here. I know that was the big goal way back at the beginning of the coronavirus when we started talking about the fact that globalism should be over, with the fact that we saw all kinds of supply chain interruptions come out of China again. But I don't think we learned our lesson. At least the economy didn't, because they're pretty excited to go back to trade with China. So it's China. It's China, I'm telling you. China. Let me move this over here for a second because I don't want to drop into that as we go. So that's what we're seeing up onto that part of the stocks here. Let's keep going. From CNBC, Salesforce, Amgen, and Honeywell added to Dow in major shakeup to the average, from Pippa Stevens. Major changes are coming to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. S&P Dow Jones Indices said Monday that 3 new companies will be joining the 30-stock benchmark. Salesforce will replace ExxonMobil. Wow, that's a big one if Exxon's coming out of it. Amgen will replace Pfizer, and Honeywell International will replace Raytheon Technologies. Ooh, those are big moves indeed. Pfizer jumping off the Dow Jones Industrial Average that's big. Honeywell and Raytheon's been lagging for a little while, but Honeywell coming up into that. It's not as surprising. Salesforce replacing Exxon and Amgen and Pfizer, though, those are big. The shakeup was prompted by Apple's decision to enact a 4-to-1 stock split, which would significantly reduce the benchmark's exposure to the information technology sector. Basically, Apple by itself took the technology weighting within the Dow from 27.6 to 20.3%. It's a significant decline, Howard Silverblatt, senior analyst at the S&P Dow Jones Indices, told CNBC. By adding Salesforce, you can come back to the 23.1% of the Dow being in technology. As a result, Apple's 4-for-1 stock split, its ranking is set to drop from the most heavily weighted component down to the 17th most influential. The 124-year-old blue chip average is price weighted, meaning stocks with higher share prices are given greater weighting. The S&P 500, on the other hand, is based on market capitalization. Dude, I knew nothing about stocks before I started doing this show, and I never intended to open up with the stocks every day, but when we saw everything happen with the bottom dropping out of the market back in March, because I started like 2 weeks before the coronavirus really took off in this country. Now I feel like I could actually start investing because I know what's going on here, just from reading the news every morning and figuring out what's going with this. And yeah, I would have never known this before. This whole paragraph I just read about the weighting and everything, I would have never known that before, but I hope I can pass along some information to you guys too, and maybe you'll do some wise investing as well and have a very, very well-stocked retirement when you guys get ready to do that. Apple has soared more than 70% this year, on the way becoming the first U.S. company to hit a $2 trillion market capitalization. The tech name has contributed more than 1,400 points to the Dow in 2020, making it by far the largest contributor. Without Apple's heavy lifting, many on Wall Street believed that Dow could have had a harder time catching up with the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq Composite, which have already reclaimed their respective records. So yeah, that's what we're seeing up in here, and the markets are back. Once again, not the economy, but it's a good reflection on what people think the economy will do within the next few quarters. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go along and introduce with the stock market every day. Let's come back and talk about my home state. Wisconsin burns. Violent riots hit Democrat-controlled cities. National Guard deployed from Ryan Saavedra. Yep, they pulled the guard out last night. I was talking to some people in the Beauty and the Beta Frozen North Discord group, fans of Beauty and the Beta, who are also on Discord, who all live in Wisconsin and sometimes meet up together. I've never met up with the guys because they usually do it on a Saturday, and I usually can't get out there for Saturday. But we were talking about this, and the fact of the matter is Wisconsin is very much in play right now, this time through. A union state in play for Republican politics. And I'm pretty sure that the skinny skeleton Evers sat up in Madison and said, well, if we have another Portland happen in Kenosha, well, that's just going to swing the state in favor of Trump, and we can't have that. So he pulled the National Guard out, absolutely did, and that's what we're seeing up out of this. So let's see what they have to say here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get down there today because I am going to have to go and make a living at some point today, especially if I want to be off in November when I go down and enjoy the election day coverage in Washington, D.C. But let's see what we have here. On Tuesday night, violent rioters attacked Kenosha and Madison, which both have Democrat mayors, as Wisconsin Democrat Governor Tony Evers failed to stop the violent riots from spreading after they began on Sunday night over an officer-involved shooting. The violence came after Evers immediately moved to criticize the way that law enforcement responded to the domestic incident call on Sunday that resulted in a man who was black being shot multiple times. Evers' rush to criticize the police came while he admitted that they did not have all the facts of the case. A furniture store in Kenosha was destroyed, another car dealership was attacked, and the Community Corrections Division building went up in flames. Multiple reporters said that those involved were Black Lives Matter activists. Yep, I already heard people talking about too while I was down there yesterday. They were already talking about the fact that they were going to bus people in from Green Bay to go and help them riot and help them destroy the city. The furniture store. No! I know that place. I bought stuff from that place. No, not that one. Fuck. It's changed hands before, but I know that one. And you know, let's get your ears on here.
Oh, that's it.
My ears on too. Yeah, we saw that building a little bit yesterday. I walked around it. We didn't really take a close look at that because it didn't look like there was much going on there. Billowing smoke from mass fires due to BLM riots in Kenosha. Okay, no, that wasn't the one I thought it was, but even still. Burn, loot, mob. That was one of the garbage trucks that we looked at yesterday on the video. They haven't moved it yet from yesterday. And now they're going to torch that one too. Backup fire trucks are arriving from other counties in the area. It's almost 12:30 a.m.
how far that is from here.
It's about 17 miles from where they are right now, from that intersection, is where Caledonia is. Yeah, that's right around the corner from where I used to live, too. I used to walk under that bridge all the time. Yeah, that's the Department of Corrections building. I don't know if you guys can see that on the screen, but yeah. Yeah, that's all that we're seeing up out of this here, and so much more. And another car shot. Which means at that point...
I want you to stick like right here, like let's...
At that point, they've moved beyond the train tracks. And they're coming up on the other side. Yep, they did another one. Alright, I can't watch any more of this, you guys. I can't watch any more of these videos. Get the live chat back up here. Alright, let's keep going off of this here. But yeah, that is what we're seeing up off of this, and it's, I mean, the Daily Wire article is just a wall of tweets and videos up off of all of this, of places that I used to go and hang out. So this is just, for me, this is, I can't even, it's hard to look at, for me. And I mean, imagine if this was happening in the place where you, and I mean, I didn't even live there as a child. That's the big thing. I lived there as a young adult. But yeah, I did a lot of growing into who I am today from living in that city. So it hurts a little bit. I'm not going to lie. All right, let's move on here and talk a little bit more about this. From NBC News, protesters returned to the streets in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where a black man was shot in the back by police. This is from Tim Stello, Phil Helsel, and Linda Givitash. Law enforcement in riot gear deployed tear gas against demonstrators in Kenosha, Wisconsin late Monday. Video on social media showed as protesters defied curfew for a second night in the wake of a police shooting of a black man. While the protests began peacefully, they always do. Several buildings and cars were burning late on Monday. NBC affiliate WTMJ reported it was not clear how or when they started. Several parked vehicles not far from the courthouse were in flames about 11 p.m., according to video and an NBC crew at the scene. Some in the crowd also appeared to be looting shops, according to a video shared on social media and verified by NBC News. A mattress store was among the shops broken into. The video showed the front of banks and offices were also smashed. The extent of the damage remained unclear overnight, but an assessment would be made later Tuesday morning, Kenosha Fire Chief Charles Leipzig told NBC News in an email. Anger surged following the shooting by police of Jacob Blake, 29, on Sunday, just 3 months after the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis police custody. Earlier on Monday, Governor Tony Evers authorized the National Guard to help local law enforcement respond to the protests after dump trucks were set on fire. Yeah, we looked at some of those too. They were the older dump trucks, but I mean, even still, that's tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage. Evers said in a statement that the troops would help protect critical infrastructure and ensure that Kenoshians are able to assemble safely. Protesters converged on the courthouse and threw objects at police Monday, the Associated Press reported. Protesters chanted "Justice for Jacob" and "No justice, no peace" minutes before the 8 p.m. curfew. NBC affiliate WTMJ of Milwaukee tweeted the photo of what was reported to be tear gas being deployed near the courthouse shortly before 9 p.m., about an hour after the curfew went into effect. And yeah, there are some other things that are going off of this. I did see another picture, but I haven't verified the contents of the picture, that possibly showed Blake being in a confrontation with the police minutes before the famous video here that we're seeing here happened, where they already had guns drawn on the guy and he was walking around calmly to the front of the vehicle with guns on him and then reaching for something. I listened to Styx yesterday morning as soon as I got off the air, and Styx said this was totally justified. And honestly, after looking at that, of course they're going to cut off the fact where he was leaning into everything, and now they're just going to come back to him laying on the ground. Fuck you, NBC. Fuck you. That is a fucking psyop right there, if I've ever seen one here. No, that guy clearly reached for something while he was in there. And yes, some of this is going to be the fact that people want to go out and burn and be angry and protest and everything else off of this. But some of this is people are just going here to be after free shit. There's no way that the people coming down from Green Bay knew who Jacob Blake was. Knew him, maybe a couple people in the crowd, but there's no way that the majority of the busload that came down there to protest off of that knew who this guy was. They're out here after free shit and destruction is what they're after off of this. So that's what we have to see up off of this here. We are going to keep going off of this. We'll read from the Chicago Tribune. Archived, of course, because they don't let you read their articles if you have an ad blocker on. Wisconsin governor summons the National Guard as protests erupt after Kenosha police shooting, from Scott Bauer and Maury Gash. Wisconsin's governor summoned the National Guard to head off another round of violent protests Monday after the police shooting of a black man under murky circumstances turned Kenosha into the nation's latest flashpoint city in a summer of racial unrest. Democratic Governor Tony Evers said 125 members of the National Guard would be in Kenosha Monday night with the responsibility for guarding infrastructure and making sure our firefighters and others involved are protected. The move came after protesters set cars on fire, smashed windows, and clashed with officers in riot gear Sunday night over the wounding of 29-year-old Jacob Blake, who was hospitalized in serious condition. He was shot apparently in the back as he leaned into his SUV while his 3 children sat in the vehicle. Kenosha became the nation's latest flashpoint city in a summer of racial unrest after I don't know. This looks like a paragraph we read already. Alright, anyway. Protesters set cars on fire, smashed windows, and clashed with officers in riot gear Sunday night, while Democratic Governor Tony Evers and Democrat presidential candidate Joe Biden immediately condemned the shooting of the 29-year-old Jacob Blake, who was hospitalized in serious condition. Yeah, it looks like they kind of repeated themselves a few times in this article here, but yeah, that's what we're seeing up out of this. And the National Guard is out, which is good because the police definitely need help. I definitely thought I was going to get tear gassed after they rushed the city building. I thought I was going to get to see that go up in flames. So we'll see what happens there. One more here from the Washington Post, and then we are going to go and look at what Madison was doing. After video shows Wisconsin police shooting a black man multiple times, National Guard is called to Kenosha. I just want to see what their spin is on this. We've read all the information that's going to be in this article here, but I know that WAPO is going to have a certain spin on all of this. The video starts as Jacob Blake rounds the front of a silver SUV on Sunday with 2 Kenosha, Wisconsin police officers following close behind, their guns drawn. When Blake opens the door and steps inside, the officers suddenly fire toward his back, at least 7 times. Blake is in serious conditions. The officers have been placed on administrative leave, and the city of Kenosha declared emergency curfews after protests rocked the city into early Monday morning. Another curfew was set for Monday night, while the governor announced he had called in the National Guard. The video footage quickly spread online. It comes as the country has faced months-long protests that began after George Floyd's death in custody of Minneapolis, setting off the wave of demonstrations against police brutality and for racial justice. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers called for greater police accountability. Of course he did. While we do not have all the details yet, what we know for certain is that he's not the first black man or person to have been shot or injured or mercilessly killed at the hands of individuals in law enforcement in our state or in our country, Evers said in a statement. We stand with all those who have and continue to demand justice, equity, and accountability for black lives in our country. Tony Evers, resign. Fuck you. So yeah, for the most part, this article is just going to be the same stuff that we've read already, but with a little bit of the Washington Post spin of the fact that all police are evil, Tony Evers is a saint, and the National Guard is coming in under the direction of Tony Evers to come out and crack skulls and make sure that everything comes out peacefully to keep evil Donald Trump from calling out the National Guard and the Army to come in and crack skulls and be an evil dictator. So we'll see off of this what happens with this. Now let's go look to the north of me. So, for starters, I've got a tweet thread from Sammy Shulk. If you're going out tonight in Madison or Kenosha, please don't videotape folks doing anything illegal. Wear black. Wear shoes you can run in. Bring water, masks, phone battery, snacks. If you get gassed, rinse your eyes with water only. We don't know what chemicals they're using. Write the name of a bailout friend at home on your leg in Sharpie. Let people know where you plan to be and how long you plan to stay out. Stick with the group. Don't leave comrades behind. I'll be doing support from home tonight and monitoring my people. Good luck. There are white folks with guns and bulletproof vests walking around downtown Madison claiming they are there to protect downtown and keep things peaceful by what? Threatening to or actually shoot black folks and our allies? Cops don't give a shit about people parading weapons, but a black kid busts out a window and they'll be surrounded in minutes. Fuck the police. Hashtag Wisconsin, hashtag defund police. And I want to touch on that for a second, that last part there. If you defund police, you know who's going to be doing the enforcement? White folks with guns. They're going to be out protecting the property that they and their tax dollars, that their tax dollars go to pay for and that they intend to use at some point. They will be out there protecting it because they are the militia. The well-regulated militia that is put in to protect property from all enemies, foreign and domestic. It would be the same thing if the French landed an occupying force in the middle of Madison. Do you think the army would be out as quickly as the militia would, as all the guys walking around the Capitol Square and State Street with guns? Do you think they'll be out just that fucking fast? No. It is going to be the militia, and that's why the French won't land an army in the middle of Madison. Or the Iraqis, or anybody else out there. But my God, no. You're coming out here and telling people how to commit crimes, and you should be considered to be an accessory for that. So let's see what spawned all this. From Wisconsin State Journal, absolutely horrific. Madison responds to Kenosha police shooting of Jacob Blake. From Emily Hamer. Protesters in Madison took to the streets Monday as outrage over the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha Sunday roiled the nation. Blake, 29, remained in serious condition Monday after Kenosha police shot him. A widely seen cell phone video made by an onlooker showed at least one Kenosha police officer shooting Blake's back as he leaned into his SUV, which had 3 children sitting in it. 7 shots can be heard in the video. You always have the feeling there it can happen here. Or if it happens there, it can happen here, says Alderman Sherry Carter, the first African-American woman elected to Madison City Council president. It puts a layer of stress and anxiety on the black community, although it didn't happen in our community, which is because you have redlined most of the people who would be out protesting over to Milwaukee. We talked about that yesterday. As a black woman, Representative Shalia Stubbs of Madison said watching the video of Blake getting shot was traumatic. I'm shook up. I cried, Stubbs said. My heart goes out to Jacob Blake's family. There were children in that vehicle that could have been killed by a gunshot from law enforcement, whose job it is to protect and serve. Or, here's the alternative, if he'd got in the car and started on a high-speed chase, they could have been killed by the crash that came with that. Or, they could have watched Daddy go out and knife somebody down or shoot somebody down and get shot even worse, this time in the front. and probably die instead of actually walk away and live. There are so many worse things that could have happened about this. Stubbs said one of the worst parts is that after the police killings of George Floyd in Minneapolis and Breonna Taylor in Louisville, the police violence against black people is starting to almost feel normal. About 100 to 200 people gathered shortly after noon on the Capitol steps before marching down State Street. Protesters made their way towards the UW-Madison campus, chanting Black Lives Matter and Jacob Blake. They briefly held up traffic on Johnson Street where they shouted, "All cops are bad cops." I'm sure that's not what they were shouting. At a handful of police officers watching from the curb. I want to point something else out that Styx pointed out as we move on off of this article here, and that is the fact that, this was justified. Given everything that I've seen off the video, this was justified, especially with the kids and the girlfriend in the car. Because their lives were in danger if he'd have got into the car and sped off, because he did not seem like he was going to cooperate with any of the commands that were coming off the police officers. So yes, get in the car, start into a high-speed chase, pull a weapon out, anything else. This was justified, and as of right now, there's no police officer in this country in their right fucking mind that will even touch their gun around a black guy. Unless the situation absolutely 100% calls for it. Without any shadow of any doubt anywhere. So, that's what we're seeing up off of this, and it is just, I can't believe I can believe Madison's going into it. Because that's what they do. It's a very, very progressive town, so they're just gathering up because they want to be around the Capitol and protest. Let's look at a couple other things from this one here. Protests descend onto State Street Monday night. Businesses preparing for the worst. Yes, the businesses that have already just taken the boards out of their window from the last time when we saw the guy in the bar that got arrested because he was walking around with a bat and a bullhorn and said, "I'm disturbing the shit out of this place. I'm disturbing the shit out of the police. And I got a bet. I like your shirt." That fucking idiot. I gotta make a sounder for that. I actually need to figure out how to make sounders and get a sounder board and make a sounder for that one. I like that one. 6 individuals were arrested, by the way, from Nick Viviani. Madison police say that numerous dumpster and trash fires were started Monday night during a downtown Madison protest after the shooting of a black man in Kenosha. 6 individuals were arrested by police. According to an MPD incident report, windows were broken and multiple businesses in the State Street area were looted throughout the night. Police say members from the crowd poured what they believed to be gasoline inside an unidentified business and attempted to start it on fire. Madison police say as many as 500 people gathered throughout the night. The crowd allegedly threw rocks and bottles at officers. An incident report indicated chemical agents were used in response. Demonstrators started at the Capitol steps early evening and began marching up and down State Street. Police say protesters began the night by blocking traffic several times, but otherwise causing no issues. Early in the night, a Madison Police Department spokesman told NBC 15 News that they were monitoring the situation. He added that officers were close by, but they were trying to give the protesters some space. As protesters marched on, owners and employees of some downtown businesses were downtown as well, but for a different reason. They were seen boarding up windows and doors as a precaution, and we saw a little bit of that yesterday in Kenosha too. For the most part, we saw a lot of businesses that had their windows busted out that were boarding up, but I know I saw at least one building where they were boarding up preemptively, where they were boarding it up to try and make sure that nothing bad happened to that particular business. I saw a couple of them that I suspected that, but one for sure they were doing it preemptively. One business owner told NBC 15 News he was preparing for the worst. The protesters said they expected the protest to remain peaceful and that they were there because they're tired of the injustice in the black community and the police brutality. "I'm disappointed because it's just like you guys complain about us protesting but then do stuff that makes us protest." Wow, that sounds like the domestic violence argument. "Why are you making me hit you like this? Come on. Don't burn the chicken. Why you make me hit you like this?" Dajade Riddle, a Madison local protesting in downtown, said, "What do you think is going to happen? Obviously, we're going to keep protesting. We're tired of it. especially it happening in Wisconsin now. I don't feel safe, so obviously I'm going to protest for it. Riddle said that she would not be participating in any violence at the demonstration Monday night, but said she wouldn't be surprised if other protesters did. Protester Nicholas Emanuel of Madison shared his advice for police. If you're a police officer and you are good, stop coming into the job and are so scared. Learn about your fucking community. Learn what's right and what's wrong. If you're a good cop, you need to arrest all the bad cops, and you need to call that out because that's not okay, he said. Wow. So yeah, this is moving on into demands and getting just a bit scary on this point. I've never lived in Madison. I worked there for a while, but I've never lived there. But yeah, I know what the Madison climate is like. All right, last one here on the protests, and then we're going to move on and talk a little bit about the RNC, which there's plenty there to talk about as well, as you can see across the top there. Another night of destruction in downtown Madison following Kenosha police shooting. So we're just going to whip through this one quick because I don't think there's going to be much new information in this one here from WKOW, ABC affiliate out of Madison as well. Chemical agents were used and arrests made during destruction in downtown Madison overnight in response to a police shooting in Kenosha. The Madison Police Department said peaceful protest with about 500 people took place Monday night and then spiraled into destructive criminal activity with some members of the group starting fires, breaking windows, and looting businesses. MPD said at one point a business was entered and the crowd poured what appeared to be gasoline inside of it, then tried to set it on fire. Let's see what Jessica Porter had to say here. Let's get the ears on for everybody here. That appears to be a home appliance store of some sort. A little one downtown. My old boss lives downtown. I better make sure that he's okay. I'm glad I read through this because that just reminded me of that there. So, the Madison Police Department acted as security throughout the night, and the Madison Fire Department extinguished the fires. Agitators threw rocks, bottles, and other projectiles as officers and MPD said chemical agents were used. Why would you burn your own town? That's the one thing that I can't understand. This is where you live. This is where you buy stuff. And yet, they're still going to go and burn it down. So that's what we're seeing up out of Madison. Madison and Kenosha, both burning. They're not really burning Milwaukee as far as I know, so we don't see that there. But yeah, Madison and Kenosha, definitely. And I don't know what's going to come out of it. All right. Let's keep going here. So I've actually got some more video for you. I just turned the ears off for you guys, but I've got some more video here. Unhinged, Pelosi labels Republicans domestic enemies, enemies of the state. Let's get this one back on.
Trying to interfere in our election. But they're not the only ones. We take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with their allies in the Congress of the United States. But again, let's just get out there and mobilize, organize, and not let the president deter anybody from voting. And again, support the postal system, which is election central. They're doing everything they can. Suppress the vote with your actions, scare people, intimidate by saying law enforcement will be there, diminish the role of the postal system in all of this. It's really actually shameful. Enemies of the state trying to interfere in our election. But
So, if they're enemies of the state, does that mean that they get all kinds of funding and weapons given to them? I don't know. That's what we do with enemies of the state elsewhere in the world. So, we'll see what happens off of that. But yeah, and I figured you guys would want to hear what Nancy Pelosi thinks. This is another basket of deplorables thing. I don't understand why they think this is a winning strategy to come out and say, "Oh yes, no, no, Republicans are enemies of the state. They're baskets of deplorables. They're in their trailers, putting mayonnaise on bread and eating it." Why would you insult people that you're trying to swing your vote for? Why? I don't understand. I don't get it. But apparently they consider it to be a winning strategy. I think that a lot of progressives are misinformed. But I'm not going to come out and call them stupid, especially not to their faces, especially not in a press conference where they're going to come out and see that. I want to reach out to progressives and say, hey, tell me why you believe what you believe, and let's see if we can find a common ground somewhere. Because I want to earn the votes of progressives. I want them to see what it is that they're voting in, what it's going to do to the rest of us. And I want to help turn them back to the other direction and see if we can't come to at least, I don't know, some sort of middle ground. If not outrightly, make it so that we can vote together on things. But the Democrat strategy, once again, seems to be insult the people that you want to vote for you. All right, let's move on to the RNC. From CNN, we'll start out the night. Trump's convention offers misleading portrait of his presidency. Had Donald Trump conducted the kind of presidency portrayed on a truth-bending but stylistically sound first night of the Republican National Convention, he might not be in such a desperate fight for his second term. I don't know if he's in as desperate of a fight as you think that he is. The president was presented as a statesman and an inspiration, an almost benevolent force, a friend to black Americans, an unparalleled hostage negotiator, and a shield against an assault on American values, who was riding high after a coherent first term in a package designed to appeal strongly to conservative voters. It was an impression of Trump that was often at odds with the reality of most turbulent, divisive presidency in generations, one that critics see as a threat to American democracy itself. Trump's most high-profile defenders had to project onto Democrats the faults that his accusers see embodied in his approach to politics. We seek a nation that rises together, not falls apart in anarchy and anger. We know that the only way to overcome America's challenges is to embrace America's strength, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley said, in a speech that sent her already intense 2024 primary buzz off the charts. We must choose the only candidate who has and who will continue delivering on that vision, she said. A more familiar blast of Trumpism came from the president's son, Don Jr., who was mocked Democratic nominee Joe Biden as the Loch Ness Monster of the swamp. It's almost like this election is shaping up to be church, work, and school versus rioting, looting, and vandalism, Trump Jr. said. I don't see any difference. I don't see anything wrong with that statement. It was a night marked by constant tension between the more aspirational approach of Haley and the full-bore anger of the president's son. In many ways, the well-produced opening night exhibited far more discipline than Trump typically shows himself, most recently in a divisive monologue in North Carolina on Monday morning that contained corrosive claims not backed up by evidence that Democrats were trying to steal November's election. The convention version of the president also bore little resemblance to the daily drama of assaults on the new rule of law, divisive racial rhetoric, and erratic leadership that fueled Democratic warnings that he's a threat to U.S. democracy. And a slick convention video presented a misleading picture of a pandemic in which nearly 180,000 Americans have already died. Citation needed, please. Exacerbated by Trump's negligence and prioritizing of his political ambitions over science, and not federalism and local control by any means whatsoever, because, that's not an important American value or anything. Such contradictions pointed to a truism about Trump that may explain his current deficit to Biden. He is down 9 points in the CNN poll of polls, The scripted, presented version of the president offered Monday and set in peace events like the State of the Union address is not authentic and is very likely unsustainable. So, and we're going to be talking about some of these speeches individually as we move along here and go out and finish out the morning. But yeah, that's of course what CNN has to say because, I don't know. I think if they came out in support of the president on anything at this point, the universe would end. Which it may be doing already anyway. Alright, let's keep going here from C-SPAN callers, from Fox News rather. C-SPAN caller says he's changing vote to Republican after the RNC. Caller says he was a lifetime Democrat from Edmund DeMarche, and all the Democrats and progressives out there say, you were never a Democrat if you could ever believe that you could possibly vote for evil Donald Trump. Orange man bad. You're an evil person if you could be swayed by anything. A caller who identified himself as a lifelong Democrat told C-SPAN late Monday that he will be supporting Republicans this year after being inspired on the opening night of the Republican National Convention, citing the heartfelt way participants came across to the American people. The caller, who identified himself only as Rick from Lorain, Ohio, told the station that he decided in part to change his vote because of the way Republicans embraced the word God. The people of the... Yeah, let's actually listen to that, as long as we're here. We can hear that. It's right up there. That's going to fall out.
Rick in Lorain, Ohio, Democrat. Hi, Rick.
How you doing tonight? I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm from Lorain, Ohio, which is a Democrat city in Ohio. And I just want to say, after watching the convention tonight on TV, on C-SPAN here, I am definitely changing my vote to Republican. And I'll tell you what, they just put the Democratic Party or the Republican Party to shame. I'm going to follow the Republican Party now.
But why? What was it that convinced you about tonight?
It was the heartfelt way they came across to the American people, and I was really touched by the number of times they used the word God. They put God into everything, and the people on the Democratic side on their convention act like they were pushing God right out of it, and that had a lot to do with changing my mind.
Now, Rick, did you say you were a union member?
No, sir, I'm from Lorain, Ohio, and we are a Democrat town here and have been for 50 years.
That's it. Thank you so much.
You see how we tried to put words into this guy's mouth, or trying to come up and make that? I didn't much care for that anyway, but I don't know. I think that actually might have been scripted as well. I don't completely trust all of this, especially with the accent and everything coming up out of Ohio. The guy sounded like Hank Hill while he was up on this, so I don't know how much of that I trust, but that's what we heard off of this here. And, I mean, if it is accurate, then yes, this guy will be changing his vote in that direction. So, we'll see what happens up in November. Let's move on over here to the Hill. With an autoplay, of course, because that's what the Hill does. Trump Jr. calls Biden the Loch Ness Monster of the Swamp, from Jonathan Easley. Donald Trump Jr. on Monday called Joe Biden the Loch Ness Monster of the Swamp in a convention speech, warning that the Democrat nominee's fiscal policies would crush the working man and woman. Trump Jr., President Trump's eldest son and top surrogate for the re-election campaign, argued that Biden had embraced radical left-wing policies that would stop our economic recovery cold. He cast Biden as a Washington lifer whose past support for trade deals, and his pledge to roll back the Trump administration's tax cuts would harm ordinary Americans. He said Biden had plenty of opportunities as a senator and vice president to crack down on China or back trade deals that are more favorable for the working class, but had failed to do so. That makes sense, considering Joe Biden is basically the Loch Ness Monster of the Swamp, Trump Jr. said. For the past half-century, he's been lurking around in there. He sticks his head up every now and then to run for president, and then disappears and doesn't do much in between. Speaking from Andrew W. Mellon Auditorium in Washington, D.C., on the first night of the GOP convention, Trump Jr. rallied against what he described as a Democratic Party that had embraced the most radical elements of the left. He said that rather than learning lessons from the past, Democrats are trying to cancel the founders by tearing down statues and monuments as part of an effort to forget the people who built our great nation. Trump Jr., who frequently complains about censorship by the tech giants, accused Democrats of trying to silence conservative speech. This has to stop, Trump Jr. said. Freedom of expression used to be a liberal value, at least before the radical left took over. Now the Republican Party is the home of free speech. No. I'm sorry, no. No, it is absolutely not. Both parties at this point have come on to big government bastions of censorship and hatred. Yeah, no, it's definitely not the home of free speech. Definitely not. He blasted the elected officials in Democratic-run cities that have struggled to maintain order among the months-long protests, saying it's a double standard that Christians cannot worship in church during the pandemic, while rioting, looting, and vandalism is happening in the streets. So, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. And I said right from the beginning, the thing that's happening in Kenosha and Madison right now, both of them, if it was me and I was on the RNC board, I would just cancel all the rest of the speeches, even though some of them are entertaining, and we'll go through and talk about a couple more of them as we go along. But I would just cancel all the speeches at this point and just put a 24/7 feed of Kenosha, of Baltimore, of Atlanta, of Portland, of Seattle and the CHOP, and New York, and Minneapolis. I would just put a 24/7 feed of that on there. If it was me at this point in my life. So that's what we're seeing up off of this, and that was Don Jr.'s speech. I know I'm looking through some of these speeches, and I read a little bit into some of these articles before we got started here, and Jen the Libertarian was railing and bitching about these speeches all of last night. She was live tweeting while she was sitting here watching it, and she actually asked the question, is this what it's like to sit and watch Fox News 24/7? I don't know. I didn't watch any of it. I did the Red and Ed show and listened to the R-rated conservative and went to bed. Because I wasn't feeling that great, and I'm still feeling a little bit crappy off of this here, so I didn't read any of this. I'm just finding out about this from the articles. Andrew Pollack on Parkland tragedy. Far-left Democrats in our school district made this shooting possible, from Daily Wire News. Andrew Pollack, who lost his daughter Meadow during the Parkland shooting in 2018, praised President Trump's response to the tragedy, while warning that safety of children across the country depends on making sure that the president wins re-election. After retelling the events from the Valentine's Day tragedy, Pollack said that he met with the president and that he's a good man and a great listener who cuts through the BS. Then the president did what he said he would do. He took action. He formed a school safety commission and issued dozens of recommendations to make schools safer. But I'll bet you never heard about that. Instead, the media turned my daughter's murder into a coordinated attack on the president, Republicans, and the Second Amendment, Pollack said. In fact, when President Trump asked me to sit next to him when he announced the commission's findings, the media's first question wasn't about protecting kids. It was about the government shutdown. President Trump turned to me and said, "Can you believe these people, Andy? We're trying to talk about school safety, and this is what they do." But I could believe it. After my daughter's murder, the media couldn't seem interested in the facts, so I found them myself. When I learned that gun control laws didn't fail my daughter, people did. He continued. The gunman had threatened to kill his classmates before. He had threatened to rape them. He had threatened to shoot up the school. Every red flag you can imagine. But the school didn't just miss these red flags. They knowingly ignored them. Far-left Democrats in our school district made this shooting possible because they implemented something called restorative justice. This policy, which really blames the teachers for students' failures, puts kids and teachers at risk and makes shootings more likely, but it was billed as pioneering approach to discipline and safety, he continued. I was just fine with the old approach to discipline and safety. It was called discipline and safety. But the Biden administration took Parkland's bad policies and forced them into schools across America. When President Trump rescinded Obama's guidance on restorative justice policies, he put an end to that. So yes, one of the Parkland parents, after all the coordinated attacks that they did use against the president from Parkland, is now in the president's camp. So good on this one here, and yes, he hits some of these points right on the head. And we all know the meme where back in the 50s, if the kid got a bad grade, the teacher was sitting there looking very smug, and the parents were looking angrily at the teacher. And then now, if the kid gets a bad grade, the kid is standing behind the parents looking really smug, and the parents are looking angrily at the frightened teacher. And yes, that is the restorative justice thing that Pollack was talking about. This is actually running in our country. So let's keep going here. Kimberly Guilfoyle. Let's see if we can listen to a little bit of this here. If this is going to be too long, I'm going to skip this one and we'll do it a little bit later. I'll cut it down and we'll do it a bit later. But they didn't give me a time at the bottom of this. 1:32. Yeah, we'll listen to this one. Let me reset this.
Kimberly Guilfoyle getting a lot of attention tonight for what she said at the RNC and how she said it.
You have the ability to choose your life and determine your destiny. Don't let the Democrats take you for granted. Don't let them step on you. Don't let them destroy your families, your lives, and your future. Don't let them kill future generations because they told you and brainwashed you and fed you lies that you weren't good enough.
I think you brought up, what she said and how she said it. I truly, from a communication standpoint, don't have a problem with that, as much as the fact that that was taped earlier today. And why was it that someone didn't say, stop, time out, hold up, let's do that again, and maybe tone it down a little bit? That's the real question, is why did that not happen? But the reality is she's speaking to an audience of one, President Trump, and I'm sure she got a 2 thumbs up for her.
You don't think it was an audience of 2, though, Alice? Maybe President Trump and his namesake, her boyfriend, no?
You're probably right about that. But then again, he also was pretty vocal and forceful in his speech as well. But clearly, look, I didn't knock any of the Democrats for the style and substance of theirs, because the whole thing with no audience, it's weird and it's awkward. But that one certainly, as Amanda said, is kind of right on up there as a meaningful, memorable moment.
I didn't knock any of the Democrats' speeches because... Let me shut that up. Go away. We don't want to listen to that again, because I will go off on a tangent and a rant for that. No, of course you didn't knock any of the Democrat speeches, because you're in their payroll and in their pocket at this point. But yes, you're getting paid to come out and knock all of this here. And yeah, I don't really have much interest in what Kimberly Guilfoyle has to say, but I thought it was entertaining, the fact that she had to shout it out like that. All right, let's keep going here from Fox 2 Now out of St. Louis, Missouri. McCloskey speak at Republican National Convention. From Chris Smith. Mark McCloskey, the Central West End resident who pointed and waved firearms at protesters outside his home in June, was a speaker at the RNC Monday night. He and his wife Patricia pre-recorded a message stating they had the God-given right to defend themselves and their property. The incident they referred to happened after protesters had broken down a gate to the gated community en route to the protest outside St. Louis Mayor Lyda Crewson's home. The McCloskeys are both lawyers and appeared Monday morning on the Fox News channel. Fox and Friends saying that the message emphasized the safety and security are basic freedoms. Just that we have the God-given right to defend ourselves, and that the right of self-defense is one of the most basic civil rights, one of the most basic human rights, said Mark McCloskey. The incident drew the ire of President Trump and Missouri Governor Mike Parson, who have both voiced public support of the couple after Kim Gardner, the St. Louis Circuit Attorney for the city of St. Louis, charged the couple with 1 count each of unlawful use of weapon flourishing. The couple has stated they feel threatened by protesters after breaking down an iron gate, and the protesters had threatened to burn their home down. Governor Mike Parson had gone on the record that if the McCloskeys are convicted, he will most likely pardon the couple. And, I mean, honestly, I do think it's a good thing. I know a lot of people criticized the fact that the McCloskeys were going to be up on the RNC stage, but honestly, to look at it, to look at everything else that's happening with that and everything else we're seeing up off of this, these are the everymen, the people who wanted to defend their home, who will be persecuted with a bullshit charge in prison if they don't toe the state and party line. This actually probably could have been one of the best things for Republicans right now, because a progressive prosecutor said, okay, I will find something that I can charge you on because you went against what our movement said. So I have the power to put you in prison, and I will find something to put you in prison on. No matter what, I will find something. So that's what we're seeing up off this. They don't really... We went through the transcript of this. I'm going to focus a little bit more on this one for Monday. Possibly get some video of it as well. But yeah, the fact that they were there, I think, was actually a really good thing. Alright, just a few more and then we'll do Twitter trending. This is a video. Well, I'm going to look into this one tomorrow because that's a video, and I'll get a transcript of that one here. So let's drop that one for now. Matt Gaetz, though, over from the Daily Wire. Democrats will disarm you, empty the prisons, lock you in your home, and invite MS-13 to live next door. From Daily Wire News. Representative Matt Gaetz slammed the Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden on Monday night during the first night of the Republican National Convention, saying that if Biden wins, America will be a horror movie. Settle for Biden. That's the hashtag promoted by AOC and the Socialists, Gaetz said, and they will settle because they know it'll be like Weekend at Bernie's. They will be pulling the strings. But instead of a comedy, it's a horror movie. They'll disarm you, empty the prisons, lock you in your home, and invite MS-13 to live next door, and the defunded police aren't on their way, Gaetz continued. It's the only kind of movie they're making in Hollywood nowadays, if the lights even stay on in California anymore. By the way, America shouldn't be giving any more power to the junior senator of a state that can't even keep its power grid running. Gaetz also took a shot at Biden's running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, saying, at the Democratic convention they promised they'll stop the madness. We've got a lengthy transcript of that as well. So, yeah, Gaetz is absolutely right, and we're seeing all of this. I mean, it's not like they're trying to hide the ball. We're actually seeing the stuff that they're pointing out off of this. And I'm no friend of the GOP myself, because they embrace a more big government style of governance, where we need to be focusing more on our locals. But when they're right, and the Republicans will at least feign the fact that they want to try and make small government and make government smaller, and they'll have Conservative Inc. go out and wave signs that say big government sucks while they're simultaneously trying to promote a big government religious takeover of the country. They'll at least feign the fact that they want small government. The Democrats aren't even trying to hide it anymore. They just want the president to be king, but the king that's controlled by them, and fuck everybody else. What you want as the small person doesn't matter anymore, and we're seeing it. Alright, last one comes to us from Fox News, and that is on Tim Scott, and we'll go through this, and then we'll do Twitter trending, and then we'll get out of here and go watch the Daily Ignoramus. Tim Scott slams Biden on race record, says Democrats want cultural revolution, from Brooke Singman. GOP Senator Tim Scott used his headlining slot on Monday on the Republican National Convention's first night to deliver a powerful address sounding optimistic notes about the country's potential, while slamming Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden on everything from his record on race to his vision for America. In one of the most stinging lines of the night, the South Carolina senator declared, "Make no mistake, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want a cultural revolution, a fundamentally different America." Scott warned that if a Biden-Harris ticket is successful, they will turn our country into a socialist utopia. Unfortunately, I believe it's going to be more like a socialist dystopia. The line echoed other speakers who hammered the message at the opening of the party's 4-day convention, spread across the original site of Charlotte, a grand auditorium near the White House, and elsewhere in a blend of live and pre-taped remarks. that radical Democrats would take the country in a dangerous direction. But Scott, as the only black Republican senator, also emerged as a key voice on race issues on Capitol Hill, especially in the wake of George Floyd's death in Minneapolis police custody. "This isn't how I picture tonight, but our country is experiencing something none of us envisioned," Scott said. "From a global pandemic to the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, 2020 has tested our nation in ways that we haven't seen for decades. While this election is Donald Trump and Joe Biden, it is not solely about Donald Trump and Joe Biden," Scott continued. "It's about the promise of America. It's about you and me, our challenges and our heartbreaks, our hopes and our dreams." In a swipe at cancel culture, he added, "Do we want a society that breeds success? Or a culture that cancels everything it even slightly disagrees with?" Scott, at several points, struck an uplifting tone, using his own life story as a lesson on the potential of every American. "I'm living my mother's American dream," Scott said, noting that he was 7 years old when his parents divorced and lived in a 2-bedroom house sharing a room and a bed with his mother and brother. "My mom worked 16 hours a day to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. She knew that if we could find the opportunity, bigger things would come." Scott said that the thought he had to use football to succeed in life, and said his focus on academics faded away. "I failed my freshman year of high school, 4 subjects, Spanish, English, world geography, and civics," Scott recalled. He quipped, "Trust me, after spending 7 years in the Senate, I know I'm not the only one in Congress who failed civics." Oh, burn. Scott went on to talk about his election to the House in 2010, where he beat a prominent incumbent in the primary. "Because of the evolution of the Southern heart in an overwhelmingly white district, the voters judged me not on the color of my skin, but on the content of my character," Scott said, noting that we live in a world that wants you to believe in the bad news, racially, economically, and culturally polarizing news. "The truth is our nation's arc always bends back towards fairness. We're not fully where we want to be, but thank God we're not where we used to be," Scott said. "We don't give in to cancel culture or the radical and factually baseless belief that things are worse today than in the 1860s or even in the 1960s. So that was the first part of Scott's speech, and we're going to draw the news to a close at this point here. And yes, absolutely. Somehow in my lifetime, the Republican Party became the party of the everyman that everybody can jump up into. People can go and run from out there, and the Democrats have become an elitist party that they have to approve you to come up into. You have to be either some sort of contributor to the Democrats, somebody who's rich and famous already, or somebody that they can otherwise control. Or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, an actress. And this is an everyman who the people believed in from South Carolina and came up into. So that's what we saw for this here, and that's going to be it for the news. And the last thing that we do on a Tuesday is we read the Twitter trending. So let's get up into the trends and see what we've got. Trending. Number 1, Tuesday thoughts. Next. Number 2, cocaine convention. This should be an intro to every night at the RNC convention at LH Show Colbert. Hashtag cocaine convention. Yeah, they're... Okay. Yeah. Hashtag cocaine convention missing. The wife, the pool boy, and her husband, the Falwells. Real Donald Trump, Ivanka Trump, and Donald Trump Jr., and Eric Trump. 70 days until Donnie loses the election. Hashtag cocaine convention. So I think they're trying to make the joke that people call McConnell Cocaine Mitch. I don't understand what they're doing with cocaine convention, but I don't know if they know either because, as we all know, the left can't meme for shit. Alright. Let's do trend number 3. Number 2, rather, for us. Donna Brazile. Because we don't do the Tuesday thought stuff. Donna Brazile should not be on Fox News. As I said, this competition is over. Donna Brazile just had a meltdown on Fox. Donna feigns being above the noise, better than any Democrat, but even she can't keep her shit together anymore. She completely lost all professionalism because she knows they've lost. Donna Brazile needs to go back to supplying the debate questions for the DNC. What a hateful woman. I just woke up 30 minutes ago. I turned on Fox and Friends, get my coffee. Now I have to listen to Donna Brazile. Now I'm listening to OANN. Fox better fire that lying, cheating scum. Liar, Donna Brazile. Mega 2020. I love at real Donald Trump. I love the screen name too. There's a picture of a donkey there and it says, "This is the only jackass doing his job." So apparently Donna Brazile did something on Fox News. I wonder if we can watch this. No, because we're not going to do Gateway Pundit because they're going to kick me out for ad blocker. So yes, apparently Donna Brazile had a major meltdown on Fox News. Let's go check the next one. All right. The next one here, Hurricane Laura, which appears to be picking up speed and power as we go along here. Another awful forecast from ECMWF. 18Z tonight as a Category 4 plus Hurricane Laura comes perilously close to Houston late Wednesday. Waiting for ensembles in about an hour. So yes, it looks like the hurricane is going to hit Houston, most likely as they come along into this. And it's Category 4 at this point. So yeah, we'll definitely be seeing that come up before the election. I'll be very interested to see what comes up off of this here. Because that'll be the next news story that we talk about. And I'll actually put a marker in here to talk about this tomorrow. All right, let's do a fourth one here. Uncle Tom. You knew that was going to come up with Herschel Walker popped up. Omar Navarro, who actually knows my friend Jake, says Uncle Tom is the progressives' way of saying the N-word. Over under on CNN calling Herschel Walker and Uncle Tom. Remember this, everything that trends on Twitter only trends because Twitter allows it to trend. Allowing Uncle Tom to trend as an attack on Herschel Walker is not only disgusting, it's blatantly racist. Uncle Tom is the Democrat version of saying the N-word. So yes, Herschel Thomas came out and endorsed Trump because he was a longtime friend of him. And yes, of course, they think that he's an Uncle Tom, but I'm sure that they think the same thing about Kimberly Klacik that we saw the video from last night. I'm sure they think that about Tim Scott and a lot of other people. Yeah, Uncle Tom, cabinet, aka Putin's GOP convention. Yeah, not even trying to hide it right now. Herschel Walker, Tim Scott, Kanye West, Ben Carson, Vernon Jones, Clarence Thomas, Diamond and Silk, Jim Brown, Mike Tyson, Steve Harvey. You thought we forgot you went to the White House in 2016 to speak for all blacks. All right, that's what we saw there. And the last one we'll read today is University of Alabama. The University of Alabama has a combined enrollment and staff of 45,000, so even with the earlier 310 reported positive, that's just 1.9%. Nice panic porn, though. From the Daily Beast, the University of Alabama has reported more than 560 coronavirus cases since classes restarted last week. Cases, though. Just keep that in mind. The cases. So apparently the University of Alabama has reported 500 cases of COVID-19 in a week. Because they're testing everywhere, and of course, once again, it's the cases. I'm going to mark this to talk about tomorrow as well. So we'll do that as we go along. So that's going to be it for the day here. We will be back here later on tonight to play some more video games and calm down from everything else here. I'm looking forward to being here, especially after everything I saw yesterday and my co-host and everything that she's going through right now. I'm looking forward to taking some time and just doing something relaxing as we go along and shooting up digitized creatures in the Mojave Wasteland. So we'll see what happens there. I'm looking quite forward to that, and I hope you guys will join me on later on tonight. And otherwise, we'll be back here tomorrow with more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.